From the top of the town at 715 Main Street in historic Deadwood, it's time for another episode of the DTC Blow and Smoke Podcast. Hello and welcome to episode number 47, the Deadwood Tobacco Company Blow and Smoke Podcast. Joining me today, as always, are the preacher, Ethan. He's over there behind the board, making sure everything is pretty. And to my left, the boss of bosses, Mr. Wild Bill. How you doing, Bill?
Hey, man, doing good.
My name is Eye Candy Randy, which we're going to stick with until I get tired of it. And this episode is all about the history of cigars. Now, not the entire history, but focusing primarily on history of cigars in the Old West and Deadwood specifically. And joining us today, who's been doing a little bit of research on this, our resident historian, making your second, correct, appearance on the podcast?
I think third, actually.
You're catching up to Shorty. Deadwood's own Brad Buttriff is here, resident historian with a wealth of fascinating knowledge, and some of it useless, and I'm sure someday future grand champion of Jeopardy.
A lot of it useless.
I wouldn't necessarily. Well, I guess we're going to find out over the next 40 minutes or so.
It didn't get me to retirement, I'll tell you that.
We're going to start this one like we always do with what are we smoking? Bill, you're up first. What did you choose to smoke today?
The Crux Limitada Short Salomon.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I like it because it's smooth, it's rich, it acts milder than the strength they say, and that's what I appreciate. It doesn't deaden the palate.
And next up, as he lights it currently, is the preacher, Ethan. What are you puffing on?
We're at Cuba Reserva. It's the red label, man. It's fascinating. It's delicious.
We do call it that.
Yeah.
What's the other label?
They got a blue one. They got a yellow one.
Red one.
Just about every color. I haven't seen a green one yet, but yeah.
That's their Candela, which will get released.
The green one's a Passion.
Oh, it is, as a matter of fact. Yeah, see? Look. I went with the Crowned Head products. I went with Le Carême, which is, despite its dark appearance, super, super creamy, thus the name, with a little bit of some natural cocoa spices. And our guest today, I see what you picked out, one of your regular sticks. Brad, what'd you choose?
At Crux Bull and Bear, my thinking stick.
Very good. It's appropriate for today, because God knows I'm not going to be able to do much of that.
Question.
Fire away.
I know I need hearing aids. Did he say my stinking stick?
No.
His thinking stick.
Oh, jeez. I do need hearing.
Just like your thinking cap in the third grade, Bill.
Okay, now I caught on.
Very good.
I was a little behind.
We'll get to the history of cigars. First, we'll talk a little bit about shop business. We've got some fun stuff coming up we'll fill you in on. And we're going to start it off with a reading, dramatic possibly, from Mr. Wild Bill. Interesting questions around the shop, given all that's been going on over the last year plus with different things in the tobacco industry. That's broad enough. Bill, what would you care to share in your State of the Shop address?
Well, since you didn't ask me a question, I don't have to share anything.
What's on your phone that you have pulled up ready to share?
Oh, that was after the second thing we're going to share. Where's the sticks?
Oh, well, go ahead. Where are the sticks?
Yeah, sticks, cigars. It's been a rough year. No doubt, but all the team members here and the team members outside that support Deadwood Tobacco have been trying an adverse amount of different cigars that has allowed us to still kick some ass. That's where the sticks are. Now What you really want to know about the phone is what's up with the lawsuit that Vaughn Boyd and Drew Estate have against Deadwood Tobacco and myself, right?
Correct. It is the second most popular question from the people who walk into the door. So I figured we just put it up here on the podcast so they can reference that. And what say you about this wonderful lawsuit that's been dragging on for quite a while?
Look, I'm not going to get into the particulars of the lawsuit here, so I'm just going to read this from my lawyer. Because I asked him, I knew you're going to have, I had that feeling like, okay, we haven't discussed this in a while. He's going to ask me a question about it, and I don't want to say something because I hate talking about it. But he said, you can say something like the court in Florida has ordered that the Florida case be closed, pending a decision on jurisdiction, and that you are hopeful that the case will come back to South Dakota since the contracts are South Dakota contracts. He goes, I wouldn't get into much of substance of the claims. Hope that helps.
Short and sweet.
I hope that helps.
Yes. If we were to, next time we do a podcast, if we were to call him up, would he charge you for that?
You know what?
Just to hear it from the horse's mouth so that we don't make any mistakes? He's going to text him right now. Hey, can we get you on the podcast? Is that in my retainer? Or is
Yeah.
that going to be billable hours?
Yeah. Well, how much per text? I mean, you could ask that question.
Pretty much could. Yeah, but ask it in one text. I like how Brad laughs immediately.
I know about lawyers.
Short and sweet. We're still in the middle of the lawsuit. Bill read you the statement from the lawyer and what he can discuss. As soon as we know more, obviously, we will be the first to let you know. It, in my opinion, not affiliated with Deadwood Tobacco Company, things seem to be going in a positive direction. So let's just leave it at that, right, Bill?
Very much so.
All right, good. On a lighter note, live music is still going strong here at Deadwood Tobacco Company, sponsored by Shiner Beer. A bunch of Shiner on tap, including Shiner Black and Shiner Bock, and we've got Shiner Sea Salt and Lime and Shiner Light Blonde and all of that. Very happy to have Michael Maxwell and the Shiner folks sponsoring Chris Graves this Saturday night. Chris will be with us. And then Mardi Gras is next weekend, the weekend after this podcast comes out, featuring Doc Field's Cyberdelic Voodoo. And it's a great trumpeter, guitar player, keyboard, vocalist. They play a lot of that psychedelic 60s and 70s rock. A fun time for Mardi Gras.
Hey, Randy.
Yes.
I appreciate you saying all the Shiner stuff.
Uh-huh.
But can I tell you that this beer from Milwaukee tastes pretty good?
Thanks for your sponsorship. We're going to plug your competitor. Yeah. Yes, you're drinking the Lakefront Amber out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
What's the red IPA that we've got on tap right now?
That is what I am drinking. That is the Lost Cabin Hobo Queen.
7.2.
I like it.
Yep. It's got a high ABV. It is named after one of the runs up at Terry Peak, and it's a wintertime only beer. And so,
And you should drink it at half pours. It goes down.
Upcoming events, before we get to the history of cigars in Deadwood, Chamber Mixer is coming up here on Thursday the 8th. Thursday the 8th, we will have some delicious Shiner beer as well. We'll have some hors d'oeuvres or hors d'oeuvres, whichever you prefer. And we'll show off the new shop. We'll have a little bit of a live music, a solo acoustic guide to entertain. You can check out the humidor, check out all of our soft goods, T-shirts and hats and all that stuff, and just get familiar, because it's coming up on the 1-year anniversary in the brand new location. It was February 4th when we opened up, and the mixer is on February 8th, followed very shortly thereafter by St. Paddy's Day with Maxwell from Shiner and Shorty and the entire CLE gang will show up, and most importantly, Aries will be here as well.
It's always big.
Always.
Dude, the double sweets will be back.
There you go.
We just talked about that today.
Well, fill us in. What is the name of the double sweet?
Double sweet.
Okay. Does it start with an A and have 3 numbers in it?
No, it's the double sweet.
Just the double sweet.
Yep.
Straight up double sweet.
Yep.
5-pack?
Is it a 5-pack or 4-pack?
5.
It's a 5-pack at 600 of them.
600 5-packs?
Yep.
Beautiful.
They're
And
not going to last.
No, last year we sold out of them in 6 weeks, I think, maybe 8 weeks, but it was quick.
It's that sweet candy apple.
Yep. Candela wrapper.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Very good. Make sure you stop by for that. All right, well, that's enough about the shop business. If you're still listening, we appreciate it, and watching. We have got a whole lot more for you coming up. But first, we're going to have a quick smoke with CLE Araya Asylum 13, Mr. Christian Eiroa. And now it is time for another edition of A Quick Smoke With. And today, joining us from CLE Araya Asylum 13 is Christian Eiroa. Thanks for coming down.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
We're going to take this nice and easy, quick and simple. 3 questions. Number
I can't
one.
wait.
You can't wait. Yeah, I can tell by the smile. Is that $1 million smile? I think it is. From your product lines, you can have 1 cigar and that's it. No more cigars for you.
Eiroa Dark 50 by 5.
Yeah,
That was easy.
I told you it was going to be painless. That's what I thought. I'd heard that a couple of times from you. Why that particular cigar?
Bro, it's the top leaf, the top priming. You could almost say that I built the whole factory just so I could make that cigar.
Fair enough.
I didn't even catch that. What did he say?
The Araya Dark 50 by 5.
The dark.
Yep.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely.
Number 2, easy question as well. Actually, you know what? It's not so easy. We're going to have to edit this. I can't remember what's question number 2.
The dream cigar.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. This one will be interesting with you. All right. Take 2. Question number 2. What is your holy grail cigar, your dream cigar? It's either maybe something that's out of production, something that you've only recently heard about, something brand new. What would you want to find out there, top of the mountaintop for you, your dream cigar?
Yeah, there's a farm my father had called Coilar, and we sold that farm many years ago because it just wasn't that, the yields weren't that big. And I came up with a cigar that was pretty much like the Eiroa Dark, but using tobacco from that farm. And it was all top priming tobacco, all ligero tobacco, and I can't make the cigar anymore. And now those are the best 100 cigars I ever smoked. They were fantastic, and I'll never get that blend. I can never do it again. So I missed that one.
Very good. And last but not least, if you could have a cigar and maybe a beverage with one person, dead or alive, who would you want to sit down and have a smoke with and why?
Howard Hughes, my favorite guy in history.
Really?
That's fascinating. We've got a lot of different answers to that one. What's so appealing about Howard Hughes?
Man, he was just a pioneer in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Howard Hughes was able to recreate. I mean, he invented so many things we use today. You know, the hospital bed, the bra. You know, him.
Some of us prefer not that, but you know what? At least when it's off, right?
And plus, I'm big into aviation. He did a lot for aviation also.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, I mean, that's a deep question though, man. I wish I could sit down with my grandpa, which I never met also, and see how he got started. But you know, the people would know it would be Howard Hughes would be fantastic. That'd be a great guy to sit down with.
Well, very good. There you have it. A quick smoke with Christian Eiroa. Thanks very much. Have a great afternoon.
All right, good luck, guys. Good luck. Thank you.
And there you have it, another quick smoke with Mr. Christian Eiroa from CLE Araya and Asylum 13. We do that with everyone who stops into the shop. We'll have many, many more coming up in the future episodes and also on our YouTube channel as standalone short videos, so make sure you check those out. But now, without further ado, something we've been working on here for about, it's 6 weeks or so. We wanted to do this because moving to the new shop, we've experienced some different things here at Deadwood Tobacco Company with our community, a lot of support out there, and a couple people that don't really think it's the best idea. So we wanted to highlight, in addition to other things, how tobacco, specifically cigars, are as important and have as long a history in Deadwood as anything else. So we brought in Mr. Brad Buttroff to figure that out with us. So we'll start off with some facts that Ethan has compiled, mostly about cigars in the 1800s, as we get to the end of the 1800s, the last third, when Deadwood became Deadwood. So Ethan, tell us a little bit about what your research turned up of 1800 cigars.
Yeah, there's a website, cigarhistory.info, that has time periods broken up and just give you stats on taxation, numbers of cigars smoked. It's just a virtual database resource that gives you this timeline of what happened where, right? So what was interesting is, when I compiled the history of cigars and really talked about the episode of, Europe discovering tobacco via Christopher Columbus, and I said, tobacco is an inherently American story. It just follows suit with facts like this. In 1830, let me put this up here. 1830, 75% of tobacco was smuggled, right? Because taxation, especially in the British Empire, was 12 times the value of the tobacco charge.
Jeez.
Which is, right? I mean, you're asking for a revolution at that point, right?
Whoops.
So they didn't even learn after we booted them from our shores. And it led to this poor quality of tobacco and faked country of origin, right? I mean, if you're getting charged that kind of tax rate, what are you going to do? You're going to go around it. You're going to smuggle it in. And so these are some of the 1840 U.S. consumption of tobacco was 80 million cigars, which is formidable, right?
80 million in a population of,
You know,
Brad, do you have any idea what the U.S. was in the 1840s?
I know that by the time of the American Civil War, it was like 34 million, so I couldn't.
So two for every single human being in America.
also think about that. If you had discretionary income back then, that's how you smoked. So everybody was flourishing.
Well, maybe. One of the stats, it hadn't even taken off yet, right? So cigar consumption really took off after the Civil War because you have guys like President Grant. You have Stonewall Jackson had his own line of cigars, at least with his name on it, right?
Brad.
So,
Yeah, I've got to be careful because Stonewall Jackson died in 1863.
correct.
So I got to.
But they monopolized on that name.
Brad, could you say that cigars in the South after the Civil War became more prevalent, or could you say it's in the North, since at nighttime they exchanged tobaccos?
I know that in the antebellum South, that cigars were usually an evening thing. Matter of fact, they had their own special drinking and smoking traditions. That was also the time in which sometimes they would have altercations.
Imagine that.
Whiskey makes some people angry.
I remember that dueling was a tradition there right up until.
At one point, even I think right around the Civil War, it was something like 26 cigars, right, on average, per person in the United States. So if you figure that out. So,
Wait. 26 cigars in how long? A day?
per year. Per year?
26 cigars per person per year.
Yes.
So 2 sticks a month.
Yes.
For every single human being, though.
But it went from 80 million in 1840. By 1889, 2 billion cigars,
Okay,
which
but-
was in 8 years they gave a 4 times increase in an 8-year period.
That's
so
insane.
Cigar smoking.
Do you
took
really
off.
think the whole population, or 75%, really had 26 cigars a year, or do you think
We're just averaging it out.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Just
never mind.
just to show how prevalent it was.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind,
I
never
don't
mind.
think the
'Cause I was
4-year-olds
like-
were really taking
No,
down 26
no,
a year, man.
Obviously, adult age, but I was looking at it like, well, there's days that I do 7.
Yeah.
Well-
yeah.
Allegedly, Ulysses S. Grant smoked a box a day.
Yeah. Yeah, and they
No,
started
thank
off
you.
with the amount of
What?
tobacco that was being shipped to England. So England was having all of these troubles trying to tax it at the rate that they were trying to tax it at, and then smuggling around it. Well, the same thing, of course, follows suit in America.
Well,
So
wait a second. These aren't the same shapes that, I mean, obviously that we have today, but what shapes were they smoking?
yeah, they had some.
Was it the European skinny stuff, or was it a normal?
I'd have to look it up. They have a bunch of hybrid names that became really popular,
You
Sixers
got
and
me
stuff
asking-
like that.
You got
right?
my brain spinning. I got lots more questions.
So this is the thing. So
Fascinating.
America now jumps into the act. The federal government, 1863, the United States federal government sought to regulate tobacco, the quantity, the boxes, the distribution, all of that stuff. And if you look at the tax rates, so they were shipping boxes of 1,000 cigars. You could get a half box of 500 cigars, quarter box of 250, but the tax rate was between 20 and 40%.
Ouch.
Federal?
Right? Federal taxes, which is in a lot of states similar to what it is today. Now, of course, that was universally evaded. No one wants to pay taxes. They never have, they never will, right? 1880, this is what just sent my head into a weird place. In 1880, 33% of federal revenue was from tobacco. Has there ever been another industry in the history of the world where a third of your federal tax dollars are being generated by one industry.
Do you know what the tax rate on federal premium handmade cigar is per stick?
So it's by the state. I don't know what the federal government does.
Okay. For a long time, the federal government taxed a nickel a cigar.
Yeah.
Then about 10 years ago, they got into a debate with the cigar industry, and they were going to tax it $10 a stick. Then it went down to $3 a stick.
Yeah.
And they settled on 40 cents a stick. Now, the interesting thing about what you're telling me is the high increases of taxation back then have actually come a lot less today.
Yeah.
With more cigar smokers.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, maybe I hate it, but maybe the federal government.
We started a
does something
revolution
right.
over tea, man. Don't get tobacco involved. Okay, so in 1840 there was all of these faked cigars that became common, and there's this whole thing. It was actually a line called Bintus. Some of you may have heard of them. Bintu came from. They were created in the United States, Tampa specifically. They shipped them back to Cuba for a certain short length of time, and then brought them back to the United States, so they could call them Cuban.
Oh, my God.
Right? So in 1899, the federal government seized in a raid 250,000 cigars from a factory in San Francisco. The charge was they were using Chinese labor, they were reusing the boxes, and they were using counterfeit Cuban stamps, right? So there's just nothing new under the sun, right? Nothing new.
That sounds familiar when you travel abroad.
Hey, Randy, I got a side job for us now.
No, we can't say it up publicly. We do have a basement here, though.
I was going to
No,
say,
no.
broadcasting it out. We've got a new.
Check this out. Because the legalization of the devil's weed, why don't we get involved, fly some weed down to Cuba for a small period of time, bring it back, and call it Cuban's devil weed? Right? We just develop a seed and bring that back.
Sure.
Talk about retirement.
Sure.
The numbers floor me. When you're talking 2 billion sticks, and we're talking about U.S. consumption, let me just break that down. If there's 2 billion cigars being smoked, 50% of the tobacco consumption in the United States was hand-rolled and chew. 40% was cigars. 8% snuff, 2% cigarettes. Now what we're going to see towards the early 1900s is cigarette smoking taking off because of manufacturing, machining, and all of that. Now, this was interesting. The prices, right? You could get, I'm told, a cigar for a penny.
Yep.
In the Old West. Now, that was going to be
A cheroot.
shit tobacco. It's going to be, right, counterfeit, nasty, bottom of the barrel sort of stuff. A authorized, legitimate, hand-rolled cigar, if you could get the real thing, you would pay either a nickel
Yep.
or a dime. And I was like, you got to give me some benchmark, right? What does that mean, right?
Whiskey was a quarter or
If
something like
if
that.
you do the conversion rate, a nickel would be about $12.50 and a dime is $25. So it's really similar, right? You're looking
It
at
is,
tax
actually.
rates being similar. You're looking at retail rates being
Yes.
similar.
Over the period of almost 190 years.
Yeah. And it was taking off. I mean, Tampa was definitely the epicenter for North America, but they even chronicled cigar factories popping up in Dubuque, in Dubuque, Iowa, lasted 75 years. One in Davenport lasted 100 years.
Do you know anything about St. Louis?
St. Louis had a World Expo in the mid-1800s, and I've even got some stuff on lighters, which is really interesting. They were debuting the new technology at that point.
Yes.
Can I go there really quick?
Otherwise known as a bomb in your hand.
Yeah. Check this out. So, because as I'm reading all of this stuff, I'm like, man, all right, I got a cigar. How do I light it? So the first lighters was this 1662. It was a flintlock pistol. They were really taking pistols, right, with gunpowder and
They still
using them
make
with a
that.
trigger and to ignite a cigar. So that was back in the day. All right, so in 1823, the first lighter was a hydrogen lighter. This German scientist came up with hydrogen in a canister, and then he would put it over a metal sort of flint and ignite this thing. Now, they didn't catch on because they were large and dangerous. right? We're igniting hydrogen gas in 1823.
Sounds like a space heater.
Yeah. Another guy, what's his name? John Walker came up with the friction match. He didn't even patent it. He made enough in 3 years to give it away. So matches, right? You have a hydrogen lighter before you have a friction match. And then by World War I, you have the Wonder Lighter. So French troops in trenches actually had, they weren't quite the, the new technology of modern lighters, but they had lighters to light all their cigarettes in World War I.
They were very pretty too.
Yeah, amazing.
Little brass thing.
Brass and engraved and incredible. Anyway, that's my nerd moment right there.
There you go. Ethan's taxation. You can tell how he feels about that.
That was my whole point, man. It's an American story of capitalism and greed and smuggling, right? And the federal government.
Seems like it's a familiar story.
Everyone wants to cash in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think we might be looking at a return from the from the FDA again.
Shut up.
Shut up. Once is enough.
We passed that.
Which leads us to, Ethan gave you a little bit of history, 1830s and 1840s. And specifically, one of the reasons we asked Brad to come on and join us was to talk about it in the Old West and Deadwood specific. So, Brad, in your research, where would you like to start? What were some of the highlights of what you found?
When Deadwood came into existence, 1876, you got to think about it. The president we had in the White House, Ulysses S. Grant, he was a chain smoker of cigars. And then you've got, in 1874, you've got the Custer's expedition into the Black Hills. Well, Custer was kind of an asshole, but I mean, he wasn't exactly a tactical genius, contrary to popular. But here it is. He's coming into the Black Hills. He had this policy against smoking and drinking on the expedition, but he goes off hunting. While he's gone, his command, I know it was Benteen, Reno, others, they throw this hellacious party. 2 things, booze and tobacco. He came back. He wasn't exactly pleased, but nobody was taking responsibility. But I've seen pictures. They had this freaking mountain of bottles.
Good times.
But then you come here to Deadwood, and the whole. It wasn't just Deadwood. The whole western expansion, tobacco was like. Deadwood's history is going to be forever tied to gambling, prostitution, but by God, they should have booze and tobacco in there right alongside. Of course, Deadwood was also eventually going to be a bootleg capital of its own. But when you take a look at the Old West, if you ever see a saloon picture and look at the bar and you see what looks like a glass decanter, those were little humidors they used. That way you're sitting there at the bar and you want to get something. They weren't putting pickled eggs in them. That was going to come later in history.
Sure.
And then you'll run into these odd things. I was doing some reading about the girls, and this wasn't specifically just here in Deadwood. This was at a lot of the establishments. But they were smoking cigars too. But sometimes the proprietors of the establishments wanted the girls to be smoking not out in front of the patrons. And as I explained earlier, if they're going to put something in their mouth in front of the patrons, it wasn't going to be a cigar.
Whoa. What would it have been? A cornstalk?
I'll let you take that wherever you want.
Their thumb. Yeah, exactly.
This is obviously before the #MeToo.
Yeah, oh, yeah. But you take a look at Deadwood, the Adams House up here, that turret on the top, like a tower, that was a smoking room. You take a look at a lot of the establishments here, there were traditions around. If you got married, you were having cigars. If you were meeting after having a meeting of some sort, any kind, you were having cigars afterward. You were having cigars during the meeting. It was a social thing. I get bugged by people that are trying to whitewash history. I'm just going to be a little political here for a moment. It is what it is. And they smoked. They smoked a lot. And
the great thing even about the Adams house, you go into the tour and you go into his sitting room, he had a beautiful, it looks like a custom piece next to his easy chair that was an actual humidor.
I was doing research a while back on what they call the Johnson County War, which has a very, very loose tie to Deadwood. But this was organized the cattle barons in Wyoming. We're organizing this out of a social club. Some people call it the Cheyenne Social Club. It was just called the Cheyenne Club. But there, they would, before these meetings, they were importing cigars. They were bringing in the good stuff. Of course, these were cattle barons who half of their life they're spending back home in the East, but they're coming out here and they're completely cutting loose. They're telling the family, we're coming out here to run the business.
You got to wine and dine the clients.
Oh, they were doing more than whining and dining. I thought it was fascinating. I found a record of one of the social events they were having, and they were telling the gentlemen, who were all very well-to-do, that they were allowed to bring a female guest with them. Mind you, their wives are actually back in like New York State.
Yeah.
But smoking was a part of this. It's almost comical. One of the things that happened in that time was you had the temperance movement showing up here in Deadwood. Well, I was going to say bitches, but I'm not going to say bitch.
You just did.
Yeah. Well, these women would picket the different bars. Some bars, and I'm not sure about Deadwood, but I wouldn't doubt. I know they did this in like El Paso and some other areas. The establishments, the saloons, would actually put a window out onto the street. Now, if you were a gentleman that wanted to partake of a cigar, but you didn't want to deal with these women who were notorious for carrying axes and things like that, you stopped at the window, knocked on it, and you could buy a cigar from them. If you wanted to go inside and brave yourself for an alcohol, I mean, that was another story. But,
Sure.
And out here, they had a military post over here, of course, at Fort Meade. And when you read about that, for the common troops, these guys that were out there, their average wage for a while was $13 a month. One of the very first things when they got paid was, number one, women, but number two, it was alcohol and tobacco.
After the women or before?
Sometimes, and it was kind of a nebulous combination, or some of
During.
the women were.
Yeah, during.
Yeah. And again, it gets back to that thing about what they're putting in their mouths. I mean, we're not.
Yep. And then interesting thing about Deadwood in specific, when we started to talk about having this as a topic for the podcast, we did a little bit of research and actually was scrolling through Facebook of all places. And Kevin Kuchenbecker, the historic preservation officer for Deadwood, shared a photo from a group called Deadwood Back When, or Deadwood When. And in that photo, it's Main Street Deadwood, circa 1876. There's no specific date. You can see a group of gentlemen all lined up and down the street posing for this staged photo. Obviously, this was an important photo for some reason. And if you zoom in on the very first shop on the right-hand side of the photo, I can't remember the name of the proprietor. Do you have it up?
Cornforth.
Cornforth.
Yeah.
And it says spirits, wine, cigars.
Yeah.
Day one
Yeah.
in Deadwood. The first day Deadwood was Deadwood, there were, based on this photo, at least one, probably many places selling cigars.
Absolutely.
So we have been a part, and Deadwood Tobacco is continuing that tradition, but cigars in specific have been a part of Deadwood since its very, very infancy, which I feel kind of gets lost in the luster of the gaming and the prostitution and the mining.
One of my
Right.
favorite pictures from Deadwood history is a shot of none other than Seth Bullock and Saul Starr, and they're woven into the history here like nobody's business. But both of them are holding a stick.
Yeah.
I got it. You just inspired me, Randy.
Uh-oh.
Let's do an event for all of Deadwood and call it Cigar Days. Bring out like Cigar Dave himself to do something.
It's like the days of 1876, man.
right
Cigar
but,
days.
but it's all about cigars.
Yeah.
Why not get a parade?
It's nothing more true to Deadwood.
Right,
We celebrate gambling.
Randy. Since you're
I mean,
on some city stuff, what do you think that could really happen, or probably not?
Oh, I think it's definitely worth investigating and looking into the powers that be. And we would have to communicate with our city commissioners and our Chamber of Commerce. And
Time
A
out.
number of
We're
other
getting
things.
replaced Shiner beers from our sponsor right now.
well,
Thank you, Jake.
I wouldn't want to
Thank you,
lie,
Jacob.
but this is very delicious beer.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry, I had to.
I was
that
dry,
was nice.
so that was
Yeah,
helpful.
yeah. You texted some reinforcements. I
Yes,
see.
I did.
I see you didn't offer Brad anything, but that's okay.
I thought, Brad, did you want to drink?
I'm drinking Red Bull. I need all the caffeine I can get.
So, in your
I'll go
research,
get you some
Brad,
caffeine.
Other than photographs, like you said, of Bullock and Saul Starr, what did you find about how Deadwood is tied to, or how cigars are tied to the history of Deadwood?
Deadwood was, when they finally brought the railroad lines into Deadwood, which some people think was a civilizing influence. I find plenty of crazy shit happening after that. But this was one of the places where if you were to come and buy, if you were you're heading further west and you're looking for some place to pick up supplies, some of that was right here. Of course, there was a number of other locations, but if we were a place there, commerce in this town was nothing new. And there was money tied to tobacco, right alongside booze and the women and firearms, for that matter. I found all sorts of records of that. You wanted to buy a gun here, you could get it on a street corner. Of course, you could still probably get on a street corner some places, but that's...
Hey, Brad. Did you know that Jakin is 6th generation Deadwood from the start of it?
I was also going to make a comment about him bringing in the alcohol refresh that his dad raised him right.
Shout out to Mr. Ruth for your contributions to your child's upbringing and his.
You did right,
service.
Dave. You did right.
Yes, indeed. So you've mentioned some of the historical figures that we've seen in Deadwood. Is there evidence of these, photographic evidence, other than the one that you've pictured?
Poker Alice, my God.
Yep.
I don't think I've ever seen a picture of her where she didn't have a cigar.
Yeah.
Yep. She came a little bit later into Deadwood's history, but one of our most famous and most celebrated, right up there with Calamity Jane and Wild Bill and the rest. Interesting lady, Alice Tubbs was. 5 husbands, 7 kids, arrested twice for killing a man. Actually, later in life, ended up in Sturgis, running a house of ill repute. So many violations, she was arrested at 75 and convicted, and then immediately pardoned by the governor.
They had one incident at her house in Sturgis where she had some unhappy clients, and they cut off the electricity to the house. They had electrical at that time, and they were standing outside taunting her, throwing rocks at the house. Of course, she had a lever-action Winchester, and she was...
I mean, we're talking about Poker Alice.
Poker Alice.
She didn't play.
Oh, no, not at all. Nope. And she had a famous saying that she would always say that I just found for the first time. And it was also, she claims to have won $250,000 playing cards in her lifetime.
And never cheated.
And never cheated.
No,
Yes.
she had a little side pistol in case you were.
Yep, a 38. They reference it many times in her biography here. One of her favorite sayings was, "Praise the Lord and place your bets. I'll take your money with no regrets."
All the traditions we have.
You know, if somebody said that to me at a poker table, I'd be like, man, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if it was a little old lady who...
Right? I'm like, she
A
makes...
cigar never left her mouth because, let's face it, she was a professional gambler.
She was, and she went for years. She was born in England and then came over and got relatively started in Leadville, Colorado, in the silver rush there, and then many stops along the way before she ended up in the Black Hills, Deadwood, and then Sturgis was where she finally passed away in Rapid City after surgery. But she was a very well put together English lady.
So you can actually find women in Deadwood that are rough, tough cookie cutters, but yet smoke cigars and drink whiskey. It still happens.
Oh, absolutely. All you have to do is go to your favorite gaming hall here in town where they have poker at 1 o'clock in the morning, and you'll find quite a few.
Yeah.
The cigars, unfortunately, are only confined to Deadwood Tobacco Company, 715 Main Street, the only place you can smoke legally in the Black Hills.
It's a nice plug.
Thank you. I do my best. So, Brad, in your research, what else did you find about a connection between Deadwood and cigars? Did you find anything with mining in particular?
Mining's interesting because we're talking the real money coming into this area. And again, you're getting back to these traditions they had. If you were holding a meeting of any sort, it seemed like after the meeting was done, when you were clinching the deal, you're talking about the handshake, the signature, but it was also a cigar. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you talk about the proverbial smoke-filled rooms, they're referencing cigars there 9 times out of 10.
And it's almost like we're learning from the Native Americans at that point, man. They had a peace pipe in their mouth when they were negotiating treaties, and we just kind of took over that tradition. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. You sure that wasn't peyote?
I mean, I don't know what they were smoking.
Probably
but,
not this far north.
They had cool pipes.
Yep.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
And then, of course, as you mentioned earlier, I think the birth of a child still Still to this day, we have people walk in the store, hey, I'm having a kid, I need some cigars. Absolutely. Just another piece of history of celebrating with fine tobacco.
You were actually making a social statement of success by having cigars.
Yeah.
If you were getting married, it wasn't uncommon. The groom would have a box of cigars there that he's going to hand out.
Yeah, it's like the moment's not complete without a fine cigar.
And we use the word cigar a lot in this particular podcast. And as Bill mentioned earlier, shapes, styles, vitolas, everything has changed over the years, origin, that type of thing. But basically, if you're thinking about Wild Bill Hickok on the street, hanging out, relaxing, he's going to have what is a version of a cigar with him. And Seth Bullock and Soul Star and all of those people. It might look a little different. Maybe it appears to be like the 1960s and 70s Clint Eastwood cheroots, but it is a cigar.
I was just reading a thing about cheroots back at that time because that was the go-to thing for a lot of the cowboys. And I actually found one guy that was referencing, he says the reason why I'm buying a cheroot is, number one, it's what I can afford. Number two, when I fall down dead drunk and I'm not going to do as much.
I'm not going to feel bad that I crushed it.
Yeah.
That was probably the 1 cent cigar.
That does make sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so then with the history of cigars in Deadwood, we've talked a little bit about the early days. Brad, did you do any research or do you know much about, let's just say from the 1880s on, how things evolved with cigars? I mean, we talked about Poker Alice. She passed away in the 30s, I believe.
That's getting into a period that I'm fascinated by because now we're talking about what some people refer to as the late Victorian period. And there was a lot of traditions that we were borrowing from England at that time. And the British are going to go on later in history. They're going to invent this term, the Churchill. But the cigars were, again, a status symbol. It was if you were holding a meeting or something, or you were celebrating. But a lot of that in the 1880s, take a look at like the Adams house over here. They had a dedicated room in there in the tower where they were smoking. That was incredibly common in the Victorian period. I personally don't completely understand why they just set aside one room to smoke their cigars, but that's what they did. It's also my understanding that they had a fire up there in that smoking room at one time. Some people just have to be careful about what they do with these damn things.
Sure.
Well, if you have a fine dinner, then all the gentlemen would retire for cigars and brandy, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
In the men's parlor.
Yeah.
And they also made it an exclusive boys' club sort of thing. The women didn't go up there for the smoking. That was strictly the guys getting together.
Right.
It was a bonding thing. Good Lord. Hell, we still do that.
You know, historically, back then, when you get that percentage of snuff, I believe that would be most of the women doing it because it was not common for them to be out in public to be able to smoke any type of tobacco. So they created snuff that way, and they just line their nose and enjoy their tobacco.
Well, I know from what reading I've done about the women at that time, when they were smoking, it was something that they were usually doing in like a back room.
Sure.
Though they were, again, it was a social thing with them. But there it was a lot of the, it's my understanding, some were pretty good at hand rolling.
They still are today.
Yes.
I'm going to take that from you. I mean,
No problem.
Yes. Every instructional video or every movie that I have seen on the cigar industry, it would appear, based on my rudimentary knowledge, that the majority of the rollers of premium handmade cigars are female.
That's what I was referring to.
Yes.
The men, when you go to a factory, you can see it. It's a male and a female. The male's bunching, and the female's putting the wrapper on because they have more gentle hands.
Yeah, she's doing the fine details.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The part that makes the cigar the cigar.
Yeah.
And in a matter of fact, most women make a little bit more money because they have to put it on, and then it has to be pass quality control. And if it doesn't pass quality control, they don't get paid. So that's some crazy shit.
Yep.
And then just another example of as Deadwood progressed from the 1800s to the 1900s and when gaming was outlawed and then brought back 32 years ago, I believe it is at this point in time. Lately, our Historic Preservation Commission has done a lot of investing in creating, well, what they call ghost murals, but helping businesses in town showcase actual advertising and signage that was historic to their particular building. There are two very big examples of this, just literally 200 yards from Deadwood Tobacco Company. The first of which is these Scott Jacobs Brewery and Bakery. And on the back, on their
It's a
wall,
grocery store, right?
It was a grocery store, and it says, I can't remember exactly, but it's something grocer, and it says all the things that they would sell, including cigars. And most recently, right next door, just a little bit down from that, is the Landmark in the former Deadwood Dix building. Inside there, they have a ghost mural that references Owl cigars and Upman cigars, not to be confused with the H. Upman contemporary brand, but those were things that were done within the last 7 years to highlight that cigars were a part of the long-term history of Deadwood, and the enjoyment of cigars has been a part of our town since the town existed.
One guy came into the humidor one time and he goes, "You guys have any white owls?" I'm like, "Get the fuck out of here, man." I'm like,
That's
if we
5
did,
cent.
if we did, they wouldn't be back here, man. Like, what are you talking about? So maybe they were better back then. Who knows?
It very well, I mean, probably appealing to the masses.
Yeah.
It's probably the quick penny cigar you referenced earlier.
Yes.
So it's nice to see our community use that program to highlight not only cigars. Of course, there are other wares that were sold and highlighted on these various. I mean, there's a grain belt site on Main Street, for Christ's sake. I mean, because that was historic to that particular building.
Sure.
So it's just another way to illustrate that, despite the fact that we are the only place to smoke indoors here in the Black Hills with our tobacco license for premium hand-rolled cigars and natural tobacco. It's been here since hundreds
It
of
comes
years.
so easily to him. You know what I'm saying?
It just rolls.
He just rolls into it.
Yeah, would you like me to sell your stuff? Hey, Bert Kreischer, I'll sell your fucking shit, man. You just
Come on, buddy.
Let us go to
Come
your
on,
fucking
step
show.
up.
Be on the podcast. You can sit right
We're
next to
coming.
me. I'll plug all your stuff too. But yeah, just to illustrate that it's a long, long history, and we're happy to continue that up here on Main Street.
Keeping the tradition alive, man.
It's funny, when I used to work at Deadwood Dix, and they had an antique store there, and locals would bring in stuff to try to hawk it. But it was amazing how often they were bringing in tobacco items, tobacco, old cigar boxes, things like that. And that's coming locally.
All right. And before we close out, Brad, do you have a little bit of closing remarks or what in your time helping us with this project? And thank you very much, by the way. We reached out, about 3 weeks, a month ago or so, and you're kind enough to come and join us. How would you
It was
synopsis?
like I was doing anything else. I'm retired. I mean,
Rub it in.
yeah, I'm retired now. Guess what?
Can you just give us a synopsis of 150 years of tobacco in Deadwood?
It's not just in Deadwood. Deadwood in particular, because the place obviously is near and dear to me. I'm buying a freaking house here. But the whole Old West, tobacco was a part of it. And Wild Bill Cody, Buffalo Bill Cody, excuse me, he's another character. You never see him without a cigar. A lot of the gunfighters of that time, when they would get a picture of on a rare occasion, they had cigars. This was as much a part of the culture. I mean, don't try to cut this piece out of history.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, we will leave it at that. A couple of quick items coming up. We've got the next episode is going to be the third most watched piece of video ever put up on the YouTube by
Holy
Deadwood
cow.
Tobacco Company. I say that, and I challenge the ladies to get it to be number one. The women of DTC are coming back. Their podcast will be the next one up. Number 48 will feature Aaron and Molly and Consuela/Diana and Jody, the better halves, much better halves of many of the members here at Deadwood Tobacco Company.
Definitely better looking.
No argument here.
Thank you.
We'll have some more stuff. Last time we visited with them, we talked a little bit about how they deal with their husbands in this industry, the smell, what their habits are smoking at home. We're going to talk a little bit more about how things in the cigar industry have been helpful to our various relationships. And we'll have a few quizzes as well so that we can get to know each of the team members and their wives a little bit better. That'll be up next time.
Right.
So make sure you tune in for that. And as always, live music here at the venue at 715 Main Street inside Deadwood Tobacco Company. Chris Graves is coming out the Saturday that this podcast comes out, and then the following week for Mardi Gras is Doc Field's Cyberdelic Voodoo. The entire schedule is up at deadwoodtobacco.com. All of our socials as well. Bill, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, let's give away some DTC cutters for anybody that watches this podcast. The top 5 people to respond with cutter.
The top 5 YouTube comments just saying cutter? The
Yep.
first 5. All right.
First 5.
You got it there. First 5 that say cutter will get you a wonderfully beautiful Deadwood Tobacco Company Blow and Smoke podcast cutter.
They are nice.
And I might
Let's
even
throw in a sticker.
throw in a sticker. That's what I was going to say. We'll do that as well. Ethan, anything for you?
No, I appreciate Brad. Thank you for all your research and your insights. I like doing episodes like this, so I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
It wasn't that tough, I promise you.
We'll make the next one tougher.
All right, we'll do it again down the road. And that's it for episode number 47. Brad Buttriff, Ethan, the preacher behind the board, mixing and mastering, the owner of the shop, Mr. Wild Bill. My name is iCandy Randy. Thanks for joining us. And always, like, subscribe, share, comment. We appreciate all of your feedback. And make sure whenever you're in Deadwood, stop in and soon shop our brand new website for all of your cigar needs. That'll do it. We'll see you next time.